So with that code though, has, how we kind of decode kind of typefaces and narratives and language, has it changed and dramatically with the kind of use of digital? So for example, system fonts are coded into websites, open faces, some stuff doesn't translate properly. Does it limit on craft, or actually does it make you more creative because you've got more limitations?
When you talk about the world of typography, there's always different levels. So yeah, we talk about this digital world we live in, and we talk about the way that most of us communicate on whatever devices, and we just use the standard fonts. We don't even think about it. I mean, you do have people who obviously talk about, whenever you meet someone, they tend to tell you, they ask you what you do. Quite a lot of people tell you what their favourite font is, and because they've used it on their CV or resume and said it, and they've told you proudly that they're a Georgia person, or they're a Times New Roman person, or they're a Comic Sans person, or whatever they do. But for most people, it's nothing. But obviously, when you get to, certain levels of these things, there's a huge amount of sophistication, more sophistication than there's ever been. I mean, there's more typefaces now than there's ever been, probably. And there's more choice. At one time, it was basically, for most people, there were 5 typefaces. You'd go to a printer and he would say, I've got Times New Roman, I've got Baskerville, I've got Univer, I've got whatever, 5 typefaces. That was it. You couldn't go in there and go, I want something a bit fancier. You go, I haven't got it. Because it was all in metal when it was physical type. And so, now your menu, even on just like, Microsoft Office is like, that long. You get to the designers and it's,
yeah, exactly.
And you go on to, a website like My Fonts, and it's almost, sometimes you might say it's almost too much choice, which has its other problems. So you kind of go into companies and designers there, and they've got hundreds of fonts, and everyone wants to use a different font. And, there's no restrictions, and sometimes actually what you're trying to do in say custom typeface is actually give companies a custom typeface just so they can be restricted. So literally then someone in IT comes along and puts on those typefaces and takes everything off, and then they're restricted, because otherwise they're going to go, quite fancy using this today or that.
And I think that's so important, actually, because you need to have some sort of framework, because you and I are talking about typefaces, and we obviously have some creative background in it. But when you don't, you could have someone sending a message about COVID-19 in Comic Sans, and it'd land terribly, right? I mean, hopefully no one would do that.
You just know that's gonna happen, and as you say, in these kind of times of COVID-19, when we talk about these things, you talk about something like medical packaging, and you imagine that being set in something like Comic Sans, and then someone misreading it or misunderstanding it because it's set in the wrong typeface, and the kind of disastrous consequences. But it's not just the typeface, it's the way it's set as well. So it's a kind of a combination of the two.